Hello and welcome to the Holy Rivals Show. I'm your host, Nathan Bomber Brown, and with me is my amazing partner in crime, the Wild Ute. What's going on today, Ute?
What's up, Bomber? How you doing?
I had a great vacation last week. I'm sorry I told everybody I was going to be doing shows up there, but my internet at the Westgate sucked, so
Oh,
I
man.
couldn't quite pull that off. But
Well, we've got a treat for folks today. We're about to talk a little bit more about this research topic here, okay?
we absolutely
Jump
do.
in.
Let's jump right in.
Yeah, we're going to jump in and we're going to add the ACC to the mix here, and we're going to really look at what where things fall, at what tiers teams, schools fall in within the research side. So let's do it.
All right, here we go.
All right, here we go. So the first page right here. Y'all, this is an eyesore. I totally get it. But I had to show a visual of everybody that here's a stack rank of all the 37 teams in the Big 12, the ACC, and the Pac12. And you can see the level of research spending over the past decade. And this is from 2012 to 2021. At that time period, on how much research these schools were doing. Washington, obviously a lot. And then TCU on the bottom end of that spectrum. But look here for your school. You know, where do you stack up? We're going to have a much better visual going forward. But just take a look really at where these teams fall. So we can move on, Bomber. All right, here we go. So I call this one the tier one. So we're using that last graph that we just saw. This is just the top 13 teams that did the most research spending. So this is our tier one. We're looking at Washington with the most research spending all the way down to number 13, and that's NC State. But really some things to take a look at here, Bomber. Check this out. So you're looking at schools like North Carolina, Pitt, like a Georgia Tech, and then Cal. We all know Cal does a lot of research. And then that yellow bar is really the Big Ten average spending over the 10-year period for the average Big Ten team. So I think this is a good visualization to see on the research side, on the academic research side, which schools are automatically just easy fits in the Big Ten, right? And like it's these schools that are hovering around that Big Ten bar right there. So even Arizona, ASU, and all these schools probably in this tier one list. But really the things that pop out to me, again, Georgia Tech and Pitt doing a lot of research out there, at least over the past 10 years based on the data. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's self-evident. I mean, we've talked about these schools ad nauseum at the beginning of realignment, starting last July, even into August. The first data everybody started seeing was similar to this. The explanation was these are the schools that would be recruited to these greater conferences, quote unquote, greater conferences. And the Pac-12 holds itself to be in that regard fairly high, and that's all well and good. This doesn't necessarily translate over to competitive balance. That's a different show, but it does show that the schools that we've talked about over and over again, being at the top of that research funding for the last 10 years, I don't think there's any surprises here.
Yeah, no surprises. I get that. Virginia Tech, that one popped out too.
Right.
Don't get a ton of play, but VT's AAU. A lot of these schools are also AAU. And in fact, I think most of them are here. So yeah, no big surprises here, but these are your big boys in the research spending. And again, we're going to disclaim this. This has nothing to do with the quality of education, the quality of a school. This is the approach of the school to focus on research and development and creating new ideas, ideation and stuff, which is important to the mission of that school. This has nothing to do with the quality at all of the education. So this is just one approach to education, but it does matter in realignment. And it matters especially to conferences like the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. And we all know that. So let's move on to the next one. All right, here we go. So then here's the tier two. So really when you were going down that first graph that we looked at, that eyesore graph, this is the second tier, kind of a middle tier of research schools. And you can see also the SEC bar, put the SEC bar right there. The SEC schools on average are doing that level of research. And you can see, you know, a school like Miami is doing pretty comparable research to a lot of these SEC schools. But Virginia is another name that's been thrown out there quite a bit as maybe being a Big Ten candidate for a lot of reasons. And really that kind of matches up with what we see. I mean, they almost can belong on that, you know, tier one slide that we just saw right there. But you're seeing here, Cincy's jumping in here. Some more Big 12 teams like your KU and Washington State do a lot of research. And then you're going down and you're getting to the private schools actually here. And your first private schools with Notre Dame and Wake Forest, at least your religious affiliated private school. Stanford's a private school, and so is Miami. But Notre Dame and Wake Forest are showing up here too. But yeah, this is your tier 2. So any surprises here, Bomber? What are you thinking?
No, again, I think what is interesting to me is that the SEC is roughly half of what the Big is.
Yeah.
And yet there's no difference really on the field who's winning all the championships. It's the SEC. So while research is important, all we're trying to do is put up comparative analysis. You can draw your own conclusions, not meaning you, Ute. I mean anybody viewing this just with a very clear eye and get an idea of kind of what we talk about. What do these numbers actually mean when we're talking about research spending?
And that's a great comment right there. So really, we're talking here about what a university president, what kind of decision on the academic side, based on their strategy, if they're research focused, who they might want to align with.
Right.
So this is just one facet of the whole realignment discussion. It's not everything by any means. I don't even think there's any correlation between research dollars and wins in sports. There really isn't nothing there, but this is just on the decision-making side from the university president, especially really looking at, hey, what schools can I pair up with that are good fits? So really that's all we're doing here, right?
And I think what you said there is really important. Is it's one of the facets, but it's a multifaceted cube, right?
Mm-hmm.
That has many sides, and what drives that sort of need and desire to either align yourselves with a group for a conference, or maybe be looking for greater horizons, and what some of those things might be.
Definitely, yeah. Let's move on to the next. And this is the tier 3 of the research spending focus for the ACC, the Pac12, and the Big 12. There are no SEC Big 10 schools in here, just the averages for the SEC and Big 10. So we're looking here at the tier 3, so the lower research focused schools within that first graph, the ugly one that we saw up front. So you're seeing here, the big thing that pops out to me again is Oregon. Look at Oregon where they're measuring up. I mean, for a school that's AAU, like Oregon is, they've been in the AAU for many, many years, decades. They're very, very low research done at Oregon. I just have to imagine that's impacting their chances of getting into the Big. Not saying that's disqualifying them, but that can't help their cause, right? It's
right.
The things are working against them. But you can see, there's more Big 12 ACC schools that are kind of showing up on this too. And then, like we talked about last time, some of the other private schools that don't focus as much on research, but it has nothing to do with the quality of education. And just one disclaimer here too, there's a lot of comments online about Baylor, and including Baylor's medical school, which is a massive thing within the university too. And combining those two figures, and the research spending would be much higher than it's showing right here. Well, there's a breakaway many years ago and stuff. So the medical school for Baylor isn't associated exactly with the university now. So those two things aren't rolling up together. And this is just straight NSF, National Science Foundation data, just fact-based. We're not throwing any really opinions in here. This is just, it is what it is, right? And that's just what the university is showing based on the data from NSF. So you can get a look here. And again, Oregon's the one that's popping out to me.
I don't think there's any question that the only reason Oregon's even on this list at all is because they've been carried. They're an athletic school, and that's fine. I just wish that they wouldn't act like they were something that they're not. They don't trumpet their AAU status. To them, it doesn't really matter. And obviously to them, they don't really care what the perception is of their school, as long as they're underwritten, by Phil Knight and Nike. So when people are picking up and using Oregon as an exemplar to, join the Big Ten next, I just think that there's a lot of things that make them not a good fit. Now, does that mean as a brand they can move? Yeah, maybe. Mm-hmm. But I still think that Stanford and Washington, out of this whole list, they're the next two that should go up. And if we went back on the tabs, you got the North Carolinas. Pitt jumped out of there, right? Virginia Tech was a high number. So I think there's much better options back east and up and definitely in Washington and Stanford than you're going to get in some of these other schools.
Yeah, multifaceted. I mean, Oregon brings a big brand. This doesn't have anything to do with your brand, y'all.
Right.
This is just research dollars. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that are moving in different directions with realignment. Again, this is just one facet. But yeah, it's definitely not a positive for the Ducks. So let's move on to the last. All right, here's a really interesting one. This is really looking at the averages for all the P5 conferences versus the major expansion candidates that are
Right.
G5 here. So you're seeing that a surprise to me is really USF. I mean, USF
Right.
has a lot of research spending. They recently got AAU status. I mean, so really keep your eye on USF really as more of like a target for some
Right.
of these conferences in the future. That just jumped out really that what they were doing historically. And I would imagine that's probably going to continue in the future. We know Colorado State does a lot. We know that UConn does a fair amount too. But the thing that really pops out at me, and like I had talked all week with folks, SMU, y'all, like how, oh, look at SMU is the bottom, the
Yeah.
absolute bottom out of everything we're looking at right here. They're not focused on research. Their research is improving. They're moving towards R1 status, but they're just not there and historically haven't been there. And it just doesn't look like they're a really good fit for the pack. I mean, look at the pack average. That's that second bar to the left that you're seeing. And look at where SMU is. I mean, you're
I know.
dragging down your research averages significantly if you're adding SMU and like even Boise State. And we say negative things about their academics, unfortunately, at Boise State. But look, they're doing more research than SMU. I mean, that's just the case of this, and SDSU, San Diego State, and Tulane are kind of right there. Tulane's really close to that Big 12. But those are the things that are really popping out at me. Really, UConn, again, looks like a really good research level fit for the Big 12, but SMU just does not look like a fit for the Pac to me.
I thank you for including all the conferences. This is wonderful for everybody to see comparatively kind of what we're looking at, and then you've put all the realignment targets. The big ones that people have been talking about are on this list, and I think all this does, and this is my personal opinion, is this just lays bare a lot of the arguments that we've been told over the last 11 months that certain schools are great fits, they're aligned, but then that goes polar opposite to what you're professing the conferences really value. And when you're talking about the Pac-12, talking about everybody needs to be researched, one, fine, everybody needs to be putting money into research, great, but all the people you're looking at, if they would have been good fits, I would even say if they were up at the USF level, they would have already moved to the Pac-12. We wouldn't even be having these conversations. I think the reason that they haven't moved is just because of their situation, their schools, and the way that they're sort of caught in a cleft stick. Where did they go? How are they brought up? And in my opinion, all these schools, if they're given enough money, can be successful. But there's only going to be so many, mouths at the trough at the end of the day. And I don't know how many of these schools actually get in there.
Right, right. Another thing that stands out to me, we hear a lot about the Pac-12 and the ACC. We had
Right.
Real Alliance, a couple years ago. That's a joke.
Right.
A lot of talk and stuff. Could there be like any kind of merger and everything? It's probably not realistic.
Right.
This kind of speaks to maybe why that could make sense in some world, right? Just because like the alignment with academic approaches to education, and this kind of shows it that they're really kind of almost on par, the Pac and the ACC, in a way. So just take the visuals there. That's something to note in the back of your mind. But hopefully this provided value for folks. This is really the second one of these that we did, and a lot of the feedback that we got, we put this together to answer a lot of those questions. So trying to just provide fact stuff for you guys and make this valuable.
And please continue the comments. Ute and I this last week, we were trading multiple messages back and forth about what would be the next step. What other stuff can we present to you guys that you find interesting that we can actually discuss? Now we've got a third and a fourth and a fifth already planned. We have more information that we're going to be providing, but we really want to make sure that we're engaged and we're listening to you guys. You'd already referenced a couple points that were brought up by listeners from the last video that were directly addressed in this one, and we'll continue to do that. And I just want to make sure that everybody knows we're not here for our own glorification. To be honest, I don't really care about most of this stuff. But Ute is very passionate about it, and he has my 100% support. So we want to provide whatever we can for the general audience to understand what the data actually means, and then they can make up their own minds about where they think some of these schools really deserve to be.
Yeah, we're learning as we go here. And this is one facet, but it's a facet to be aware of. to be educated on. So nothing blindsides you. You really know where the whole playing field is, and so that's why this is valuable to look at. And so we'll keep doing these videos down the line. And really, hey, if you like this content, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and we'll keep producing it. And hopefully it is valuable to you, because we do care about this.
And we want you guys to know you're part of the conversation.
Yep.
So everybody else, have a great night, and I hope you like this video. Last one was over almost 4,000 views. I think this is going to be another big one, and they're only going to get bigger. But we want to answer questions. We're here to listen, not to tell. Please let us know what other questions you have out there, and we'll sign off.
Yep.
I'm going to go Utes and peace. We'll see you later.